I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the 5-minute preparation for your test. You could use this for all 4 of your evolutions. I like to familiarize myself with the pump panel, starting from the top and working to the bottom. First thing I look at is my pressure governor. On this rig, we use a Detroit Diesel electronic control pressure governor. And I know for myself on this one in particular, the increase button turns it on. The mode button on the left is how you change it to pressure mode. And the red button is how you reset it. So again, I'm just familiarizing myself with that. Next, we have our compound gauge. We have our discharge gauge, our master discharge gauge, and then we have our individual discharge gauges for our individual discharge handles. So I like to look and make sure I know where my transverses are, just in case that's the hose I'm going to pull on the evolution. And I like to make sure that I know where my left rear, my right rear, and I can see on this rig how that's actually a little backwards. So my left is on the right and my right is on the left, which is something I'd want to be ready for on test, during my test, so I don't mess up. Now I move to these discharge handles. I have the 4 handles here. To the right and to the left are the closed position, and I have my discharge gauges for those handles. From there, like I said, moving down, I'm going to work on my pump setup. I have my tank to pump, I have my tank fill, and I have my prime. After that, I have my intakes. So I have my keystone, I have my pony, and I have my front suck. The keystone is operated with this turn wheel, and again, every one of our rigs is different. So you need to be ready for whatever we have. Underneath right here, we have our drain for our keystone. To the left is open. For my auxiliary intake, up is on, down is closed. And I'm going to make sure that my rig is in the ready to go position, everything closed. I like to have all my drains wide open, so my auxiliary drain is below the hose and in the vertical position is open. Some people crack them like that. I like to be open so that way I evacuate all the air completely. My front suck is here. You can see the light turn on as it starts to crack. This light is broken on this apparatus. In the down position, hold it until I hear the water stop flowing. I'm going to test my bleeder. I hear the air evacuate from the system, so I know it works. So I'm going to open my bleeder fully once again. Next, working down, I'm going to look at all my discharge drains. So on the side of this hose, you can see, I'm going to make sure that they're all completely closed. If this was open during your evolution and you utilized one of those handles, you wouldn't get a reading on your discharge gauge and it would make you fail the evolution. So to make sure that I don't fail, I'm going to make sure they're all closed on the entire vehicle. After that, I'm going to look at the hose and the well. I like to set my hose up with a pole, just like this. So when I pick up the hose, it all comes out in one fell swoop. So I'm going to make sure I set it up for success the way I like it. During your 5 minutes, you could change what you need to on the vehicle, as long as it's something that we would normally do in the field. For my auxiliary line, I like to put a double male on the end of the hose. And again, I like to set it up just like this hose with the pole right there so I can pick it all up in one fell swoop. My chocks would normally go right here. They're down right now, and I'll show you later how I set those up so that way I can deploy them fast. Next, we'll move to the back of the vehicle so I can show you how we set up the hose. Moving on to the back of the engine. I like to start by stepping back and looking at the vehicle. First off, I have my clamp. So I want to remove my pin and make sure that it's easily deployable, which it is. And be thorough, so check both of them. Next, I'll step up and dress my hose bed. And make sure I'm familiar with what I have. So on our 4-inch hose here, I'm going to actually remove it from the hose bed like I am now. I'm going to check my tools to make sure they're both there. I have my 5-hole spanner. And I have my adjustable wrench. Make sure it's nice and secure so I don't lose my tools when I pull it to the hydrant. And I'm going to make sure my Velcro is secure on the back. Next, I'm going to look, and I like to locate my 50-foot coupling. Not everybody does this, but this is my personal technique, and it helps me with the fast attack evolution. This hose is easy because I have 2 different colored hoses here. So I'll look back, and in the hose bed, I can see my 50-foot coupling from here. and I know that that 50-foot coupling is attached to this hose right here. So now for the remainder of my evolutions, I know on this vehicle what pull I need to pull in order to get 100 feet on the ground clear. I'll scoot over to my 2.5-inch hose and make sure I have the appropriate nozzle with the shutoff attached, and this one does. From here, we'll move on to the right side of the rig and we'll show you the discharge gates over there. Coming over here, just like I mentioned on the pump panel, the first thing I'm going to look for is my drain. I want to make sure that they're closed. The one that's overlooked quite often because of these cones is the one standing directly behind it. So I actually want to pull my cones off and make sure it's in the closed position, which this one is. Since it's my test day, I like to be as thorough as possible and don't cut corners. I'm going to look at my discharges over here and make sure I know which ones to expect. The 4-inch is labeled very clearly on both sides, so I'm okay with that. Next, I'm going to get down and I'm going to look at my front suck piping. The front suck runs from the front of the vehicle all the way to your pump. A lot of times on these rigs, you'll have front suck drains that are located here or potentially underneath the captain's seat, or like I showed you on the pump panel, This vehicle doesn't have one, so I don't need to be concerned about it. And while I'm here, I also note that I don't have a keystone on this side. My equipment's here also, so if I need spanners, I know I could come to this side, but I don't have a wrench over here. Move to the front and I'll show you the front side. Moving on to the front of the vehicle, I want to check my hose, the way the hose is secured. And just like the side on the pump panel, I want to make sure that it's set up the way I like it. As I said before, this is all personal preference. You have the option to set it up however you would like, and it's your job in those 5 minutes to do so. So this, just like the side, I set up with this pole where I can lift the hose directly out. A lot of times people put the 5-hole inside the hose, and that has a tendency to be overlooked and get pulled into the hose, which could create a problem during the evolution. So I always check the inside of my hose to make sure it's clear. I also like to pull my tools out because they could be hard to reach in the bottom, especially when you're gloved up and you're in the middle of a test. And I like to put them very gently right here. So that way I'm ready for my evolution. And as you can see, I can pull them out with no problem. Again, that's personal preference, but that's how I do it. From here, I'll go ahead and show you how I set up my pump during my 5 minutes. So moving on to the cab, during my 5 minutes, I like to check the vehicle out so I know where all the components are, just like everything else. First are the batteries, I'm going to turn them on. As I step in, I'm going to cover my service brake like I always do. I'm going to locate everything I need to locate. The first thing I always reach for is my ignition, which is on my right hand here, and then simultaneously I reach for my headlights, which I'll do right now. Now that the rig is on, I'll turn it off so you can hear me. I need to know where my oil pressure gauge is. So I'm going to spot that right now as I scan my panel. After I scan my panel and find my oil pressure gauge, I'm going to look for my outside speaker and my hazards, so that way I'm ready during the test and I don't have to find them in the middle of the test. Outside speakers on my left here, right above the pump transmission, and my hazards are on the steering column. Pulling out is engaging and pushing in is turning them off. I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to hit my starter button. I have oil pressure, so I'm good. Next, I'm going to go ahead and engage my pump. Right here, I'm going to slide it into the neutral position. My vehicle's in neutral, so I know I'm ready to go. I'm going to put it into the pump mode. I have a green light. I'm going to place it into drive. I have a 4 on my shifter, so I know that it's engaged. I have an okay to pump sign, and I have an increase in my miles per hour, and I also heard it shift. So I'm ready to go. One habit I always have is rechecking my maxis, and they're still set. So I'm going to step out of the vehicle. So I like to do my 5-minute prep pump setup just like test day, which means I grab the chocks the same way I always do. Thumbs down, pull them up, and set them in. I push them firmly, and then I go straight to my tank to pump, my tank fill, and my prime. Pull my tank to pump, I crack my tank fill just with the finger width, and I pull my primer handle. I'm looking for a positive pressure on my discharge gauge and a steady tone coming from my primer handle. I also engage my pressure governor by pushing the up button, which gives me a light, and then I change it to pressure mode. Now I'm ready to continue with the evolution, but since this is my 5-minute check, I'll go ahead and shut down the rig and let my proctor know that I'm done. So now I'm going to put it back into the ready to go position, cover my brake. I'm going to put it in neutral. I'm going to disengage my pump. Make sure I did so successfully, put it in drive, put it back to neutral. Shut off my rig, check my maxis. I'm going to close my tank to pump. I'm going to close my tank fill. I'm going to pick up my chocks. I'm placing my chock so I'm ready for a test. I'm going to go ahead and let my proctor know that I'm ready to start my test and that my rig's ready to go.